Hi, Kate. So for anyone listening, this is Kate, Kate Taylor. I'm very pleased to have Kate on board on this episode of the podcast, actually the first episode today. The idea is that we're going to talk about Kate's experience within surveying, how she started, where she got to now, what the future looks like, and what kind of this sort of career could look like for anyone considering coming into it as well. So yeah, I'll get started now, and I'm sure, if you've got any questions for Kate at the end, please email them over to me, and I can kind of direct them to Kate, and I'm sure Kate will be happy to have a chat with you as well. So yeah, thank you, Kate. I guess first of all, best place to probably start is for anyone listening really is how and why you came into the surveying industry and where it all started.
Well, it's back in the dim and distant past, but it's a little bit embarrassing, but so many surveyors have a similar story in that it's a bit of an accidental falling into surveying thing. So I was at sixth form college in the Northeast where I grew up, and just generally being an awkward, difficult teenager, and I was in geography A level, and the teacher, I was not doing very well, took me to one side, and we'd just done a development appraisal project, and I ended up winning the regional prize for the Northeast for this development appraisal. And this is somebody who had failed the mock interview, not the mock, gosh, I'm obsessed, no, the mock exam. So Mr. Smith took me to one side and he said, have you thought about becoming a surveyor? And I'm like, no. So I went home and I literally got out the dictionary and looked up what is a surveyor. And then I just sort of filed it in the back of my mind. And about a couple of weeks later, I was in the common room having a coffee with some friends, and I noticed there was a new notice on the notice board. And I went to look at it, and it was from the civil service. They were recruiting cadet valuers, and they wanted people at 18. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I applied because my mum was a civil servant and my granddad was a civil servant. So I came from a long line of civil servants. And for some mad reason, they recruited me, sent me down to the Midlands, which is where I still am today, and started doing a degree in real estate with College of Estate Management, as well as working. And that took me 4 years. And then I did my APC. I only did one extra year after that. Actually, it was the TPC. It was it was 1993 when I sat my interview.
Okay.
4 weeks after having had a baby. I do not recommend that. Yeah. And I passed and became a rating surveyor within the valuation office. I get bored, so I got bored with that after a bit. And then I joined District Valuer and started doing compulsory purchase and inheritance tax valuations and things like that. And then I got bored with that, so I became customer service manager for the East Midlands, dealing with complaints, which was really interesting and technical. And I did an extra qualification in customer service. And then I got bored with that and had decided to have another baby. And then I came back after my second baby, back to business rates, and got involved in the foot and mouth epidemic, which you might remember. Well, you're too young to remember that, honestly. What it was about the year 2000.
Okay.
And it was a massive deal for business rates, a bit like COVID, really, to be honest, except it was animals. And I was in a rural area of Derbyshire. So but I got bored with that after a bit, because I went to court a lot. We used to call it court. I meant tribunal. We went to valuation tribunal a lot. And I never lost a case. So they realised I had some presenting skills. I thought I was Rumpole of the Bailey. It was great. So then I started training. And I really, really loved that. And I did technical training for 5 years. I did a postgraduate qualification in learning and development. Oh. And then after 5 years, I became the manager of the Valuation Office Agency Graduate Scheme. Yeah. Which is a fantastic one, by the way. I do heartily recommend it. And I did that for 5 years. And then I realised that what I did had commercial application. So after 26 years in the valuation office, I left to set up my own business.
Okay, yeah.
APC tailor-made. And I deliver training now, mainly for RICS, but I also do a little bit of coaching one-to-one. And I publish things that might help candidates. So accidental, really.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a bit long, isn't it? I hope that's what you
No,
wanted.
that's really useful. Thank you. It's kind of how a lot of recruiters get into recruitment as well. It's accidental. That's what most of them say. So I get that. Definitely. I guess kind of taking it back to originally the valuation side and go, well, rating and valuation. Was it just purely that's the opportunity you saw, so you went for it? Or when you looked up surveying, did you think, well, actually, yes, I'm interested in the rating and the valuation side?
Yeah, I've always loved rating, and I because my my uncle had his own business, I understood what business rates were. I didn't realize you need to be a surveyor, but so I love the legal side of it. And back in those days, you used to get to go out and inspect a lot of properties. They do a lot more from the desk now. And I also realized that the valuation office, being such a big organization, gave me an opportunity to value lots of different sorts of property. So I mean, I've valued pretty much anything you can value, you know, from lighthouses to power stations, you know, all the way down to flats and houses. So it's just really interesting. And what I love about valuation, and I'm still a chartered valuation surveyor today, is that combination of people, because it, you know, it's all about value, which is about people, it's about art and what's in their head, and also money.
Yes.
So it's like economics in that you've got a combination of art and science, and I absolutely find that fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. It's clear that you find it fascinating. You can tell when you start speaking about it anyway.
Valuation.
So you mentioned there, which is actually something that when I speak to, because I do recruit within valuation as well, and I speak to valuation surveyors, and I speak to people that have talked about when they was considering their options as well, and perhaps they've decided a different area. And they talk about valuation being very office based now. So when you started then, would you say that's the main differences between modern valuation surveyors and guess previously when you started?
Yeah, the 80s and early 90s, when I was sort of starting out, we pen and paper, you know, inspecting with camera. You had to go and get the film developed. I mean, it's hard to get your head around it today with the automated valuation models and all the surveying tech that helps valuers do their day-to-day job. So it was a complete lack of digital. But being out in the fresh air was one of the fantastic things, because, and I would say to any valuer, you know, you cannot beat looking at the property in the flesh. I don't care, you know, how good your data is. It makes a huge difference. So that was really great. And I would recommend people to actually drive around and just look at buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell that's kind of like where you get your passion from, just looking at the buildings. I think that's the beauty of surveying, isn't it? You get to be out and about. You get to see all sorts of things that you wouldn't just sat in an office.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess kind of to bring it back then, and if we looked at evaluation surveyor or somebody who is maybe considering university or already at university, and they were thinking about, you know, I want to become a valuation surveyor, I want to become chartered. How would you typically describe to a complete novice their day-to-day role and what it would look like?
Right. Okay. So if you're looking at doing, do you mean in practice rather than at uni?
Yeah. Once they finish their studies, how do you think their day would look typically working?
When you start working, even if you're working for a company that does quite a lot of desktop valuations, to start with, you'll still be going out quite a lot, because you just have to get a feel for property, and you have to learn what it's like in the flesh, and how to date property, how to measure property. So inspection and measurement are the first things that you learn in practice, and you go out and about and you do that, which is really great. And then once you've learned how to gather data about property, you start thinking about how you can put numbers on that property, and that's getting into the simpler methods of valuation to start with. So they'll probably start doing for bosses, they might be charged with doing comparable searches using CoStar, EGI and so forth, and in tables. And then later on, they'll move into actually doing the valuation analysis themselves, and then maybe a bit of investment valuation, residual, the more difficult methods. You don't get launched into it. The profession is quite good at holding at the hands of new entrants, and the whole
That's
APC
good.
is structured that way as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, to start with, it's all about gathering data.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. And you mentioned, obviously, very commendable as well. You sat your APC, didn't you? 4 weeks after giving birth. That's an achievement in itself, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did you find the process back then of going through your APC, and what sort of challenges, I guess, did you find amongst the way?
I had the main challenge facing me, I think, was the fact that I was really quite public sector, and you get a bit institutionalized, and I didn't really get the need to be commercially aware and look at the industry as a whole. So that would be a fantastic tip for people, especially if you're in the public sector. Look at what's happening in the commercial marketplace. Another challenge was we didn't have webinars and podcasts and all the other things that are useful. It was just reading Estates Gazette hard copy and Property Week and Under the Hammer, and we used to get Farmers Weekly as well. So it was just a lot more hard work to access what you needed, and there was nobody out there doing mock interviews and APC support, and RICS didn't have the RICS training that they have now. So I feel a bit on my own, actually. So that's probably why I decided to marry an assessor. That was quite a good move.
that probably helps, doesn't it?
I think it did. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So yeah, I guess if we talk about the APC a little bit more now, and we'll kind of go on to what you do now shortly as well, so we can go into a bit more detail. But would that be the main changes that you would say in terms of somebody sitting their APC now as compared to before? So it's quite changed now, isn't it? How would you say?
Again, it's the digital first thing. It's all about the assessment resource centre. The interviews are online. Most of the learning material is online. So that is a relatively recent change, but it's been coming for quite a while, and COVID has just exacerbated that trend. But what we do have is the fabulous content, like the stuff that you're doing, Jess, and other people doing podcasts and things, and there's a lot of free content as well, which is really good. So I would say just get Googling and find stuff out, because I didn't have that. I literally was making it up as I went along.
Well, it worked for you, so that's the main thing. But definitely, I think that is the beauty, isn't it? There's so many resources out there now. No matter what discipline you're in, really. There's the podcast.
It's confusing, actually. There's too many, really.
Yeah, definitely. So becoming chartered, then obviously, you've talked about how that went for you, and then after you become chartered, you talked about getting a little bit bored in different roles, which is fair enough. Obviously, you were looking for something a bit more, and then you went down to the training graduates, didn't you? So how did you find that change, going from actually being surveyor to actually training the next lot of surveyors?
I really loved it, actually, because I felt like cascading what I knew and what I'd learned the hard way. It was very satisfying, and it turns out I've got a bit of a talent for taking complex things and making them feel simple. So that was very, very satisfying. And for 5 years, I wrote all of the valuation office agencies rating training and council tax training. Actually, I wrote all their workbooks and manuals. So
fantastic.
I was starting with the journalistic tradition that I've carried on. But it's very satisfying to explain something, and most candidates overthink big time. So once you understand the fundamentals, valuation is not a difficult discipline. It's just getting the confidence to work through the steps.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes absolute sense. I guess before we kind of move on then to what you did post valuation office agency, in terms of life, working for them, it sounds like, big advocate for actually joining them early on in your career. What recommendations would you have for anybody who's perhaps, thinking about them as an employer, or is going to start with them? Have you got any advice for them at all?
Yeah, I would say keep an eye on LinkedIn. I mean, they're quite with it these days, and they post on LinkedIn when they've got significant job vacancies, like they recently opened the apprentice program.
Okay,
and then they also recruit graduates and qualified surveyors. And what's really great about them is the way that they have lots of annual leave, sick leave, pension, all the public sector benefits. So work-life balance can usually be quite good. The graduate program, and which also includes nowadays the apprentice program, is quite structured, and there's a lot of help with it. So keep an eye on LinkedIn, look at the VO website regularly under recruitment. I used to lead the recruitment for the graduate program.
Okay.
And they use competency-based interviewing, which is the same thing that we do at APC. And they give plenty of guidance. So, you can practice the technique.
Fantastic.
And you need competency examples to apply as well for any job at the valuation office. Also, if you're interested in the valuation office, you really need to be, it depends where you are in your education, but you need a degree that is accredited by the RICS as being suitable for valuation pathway. So it has to be a valuation first degree.
Right. Yeah, perfect.
So the choice of degree is quite important.
But definitely you'd recommend them for anyone out there who potentially listens to this.
Yeah, and I'm still a fan of them. And in fact, I went back and did some training of their supervisors and counsellors as an independent counsellor, independent trainer, consultant a couple of years ago. So I've still got very good relationships with them.
Fantastic. No, thank you for that. So I guess moving on from there then, you touched upon it at the start in terms of, what you've been doing since, but would you like to just talk through in a little bit, more detail about how life's been since then and what you've been up to?
Yeah, well, I've got my website, apctailormade.co.uk, and I mainly use that to sell my books, and I've got the latest version here. This is the commercial version with the mind map book, and this is like episode of War, isn't it? And I've also got the residential and the mind map book. I write those books and we sell those to support people with their career. I do mock interviews. I work for RICS Training, and I am the lead tutor on all of their valuation and design courses. I used to be head of the APC faculty, but it just got a bit much. There was too much going on. So I just do the valuation training now. Although I deliver the APC prep days for them, which are fantastic, by the way. I would recommend that training.
Yeah.
Also, very close to my heart, I sit on the Lionheart board as a trustee.
Yeah.
And we provide a lot of free support for surveyors for some students. You have to be in the final year of an accredited degree, and apprentices. So do check out lionheart.org for free webinars, free formal CPD, and free help getting jobs and things like that.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, definitely. That sounds really good, and it sounds like the sort of thing you'd want to be involved in. So I guess you obviously held up your books there, and what you've sort of created yourself. What would you say the main sort of takes from those sorts of books are, and the type of people you'd probably recommend them to?
I'd recommend them to people in the second year of their APC, so they're sort of on the home straight, and it's about consolidating the knowledge and because a lot of people say to me, what is it I'm supposed to know for APC? Now, you've got the pathway guide, which does articulate that quite well. That's an RICS document, but it still confuses people. So I thought I'll just write down exactly what it is you need to know. So I've got the appropriate references and then what's important in those references so that people can see the assessor insight. Because I do assessing, chairing, audit APC, and I also an appeal judge for APC. So I do know. So, and as example questions, and people say, well, how do I write the summary of experience? And the ones on the RICS website are not best practice. So I wrote some examples of best practice, and I put them in the revision guide, so give people a structure.
Yeah.
And then the mind maps are really all about effective visual learning, and they've been very popular actually. And yeah, I mean, it's not cheap, but it massively increases people's chances of success.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Kind of goes back. It sounds like it goes back to what you were saying before about, you find value in making complicated things easier to follow. Sounds like that is pretty much what those books are about.
Yeah, let me just show you a random page. So, see, we've got a table.
Yeah.
And then which highlights thinking points and common questions, and then that's a list of common questions on the other page. And the mind maps are sort of all colourful.
Yeah.
Show you just makes it a lot easier. And increasingly, and I'm sure you'll be aware of this, Jess, I would say about half the candidates that sit APC are neurodiverse. I don't know what it is about the profession, but we do seem to attract people who are neurodiverse. So their needs are a little bit more, challenging. So that's why clarity, simplification, and visual aids are critical to helping people to learn without the stress that could affect their performance.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's giving everybody different tools, isn't it? That, so you can pick what tools work best for you. So everybody learns differently. It's great. So if anybody listening wanted to get a copy of one of those books because they are in that position, where would they go to get them?
APC tailor-made.
Perfect. On your website.
Yeah, there's a contact form, and that goes to my assistant, who is also my sister, Holly, and she's responsible for invoicing and posting them out. And the orange one I showed you, I'm very excited about. It only came out last week. We're nearly through the first print run already, so it's going very well.
Fantastic. No, it sounds like they'll be invaluable really to people in those,
I just don't know why the RICS don't do that.
Yeah, I think
I only do it because they don't,
Yeah, well, if it helps more people, through their APC become chartered, then that's only a positive. Because I mean, I guess from like a recruitment perspective, obviously it's still very skill short, if you like, in the industry.
Well, yeah, I know. Speaking when I used to do recruitment, we would often be complaining about the fact that people who got the jobs didn't really understand the basics.
Yeah.
So, we'd have to actually be teaching them inspection and measurement when really they should have already learned that in their academic life.
Yeah.
So the back to basics approach, the idea is you can memorize it because it's not that long.
Okay.
And then you add your experience and your insight, and it makes your examples flow. So in a competency-based interview, you've got the really important bit to hang it on. They're the bones of it, if you like, and that's what I gave you. And then you say, well, I went to, 1 High Street. I did this, this, and this. I used this reference. And it just helps to make the competency evidence specific, which is what it needs to be.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So I guess, in terms of the industry, despite the fact that obviously we're going through a pandemic and as we mentioned, skill shortage, what do you think the biggest challenges are that might face the surveying industry at the moment?
Yeah, I think we're on the edge of a bit of and this is just my insight really, but there's a lot of positive noises at the moment in the professional press about, rising values and how resilient the market's being. But actually, I think in the fairly near future, we will get to a point where businesses can no longer cope, and some sectors will really struggle, particularly offices and retail, and that's going to bring valuation challenges in terms of loan security and business rates, as well as people just paying their rents. There's going to probably be increasing, sort of insolvency. In the residential market, we're already experiencing challenges around that dreadful phrase that I'm not supposed to use, which is down valuation. It just means that it's not a down valuation at all, it's just a valuation. But it's not enough to get a mortgage, basically, and it causes a big problem in the press. Cladding, I'm sure you're aware that's a massive issue. The Grenfell inquiry. And the increasing challenge of the digital world, the sharing of information without breaching confidentiality. How do you find your comparables? How do you inspect using a drone? All of these things So valuation is increasingly going to be uncertain. So we're going to need a better approach to articulating our valuation evidence and explaining to the client where the uncertainty comes from.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's getting a bit technical.
That's okay.
And I also think, generally speaking, we've got hanging over us all the time, the increasing issues of lack of diversity. The profession has still got a long way to go on that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm a fellow, and less than 4% of fellows are women.
Yeah.
So, you know, we need to do better as a profession with diversity and inclusion. And we certainly need to do better as a sector, the real estate and built environment as a whole, with sustainability and climate change.
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
yeah, just a few challenges.
yeah, not many. What would you, I guess, like, against looking at those different challenges, what do you think your advice would be if you were somebody coming into the surveying industry? You've got all of those things you just listened to that they might be challenges. How would you suggest that they perhaps approach their career, or what could they do to kind of ride those different storms, really?
Yeah, well, I think keep learning, and that doesn't mean expensive training. It can mean reading the professional journals, and engaging with professional conferences and things like that, and talking to colleagues. So you've got to keep developing if you want to, you know, move your career forward. Lionheart's got some very good post APC free webinars for that sort of thing.
Brilliant.
I also think that don't be afraid of the challenges. There's a bit of a view, and it's outdated now, that the property profession is a little bit stuffy and formal, and it used to be when I started. And actually, there were only 10% women surveyors then, and we've only got 15 now, so we're not doing a lot better.
Yeah.
But you've got to stand up for what you believe in. So the younger surveyors, people new at the profession, they shouldn't be afraid to be role models when and challenge inappropriate things. So say, no, you know, I'm not doing that. It's not environmentally friendly or whatever, and make their voice heard and have the confidence to change the future, because they are the future. And we need those people out there changing the world, so that, you know, I don't have to just do it on my own. It gets exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess if they don't challenge it and they just do the way that, you know, they're told to do it when they come into the profession, then they're going to continue to do that throughout their career, and they're going to train the next generation to do the same, and it's just spirals, doesn't it?
It does. And I would say engage with RICS. I mean, you know, it has its pluses and minuses. It's hard work. But that's our profession, and, you know, it's our future. So join boards, you know, join the Yammer chats, and get involved in the debate. And you don't have to join Extinction Rebellion, you know, or do marches, but you do have to have your own vision of what's right, your own values, and demonstrate that integrity calmly and quietly whenever you get the chance. So I mean, I have done that myself throughout my career, which is probably why I'm not a chief executive. But you've just got and I've got high hopes for the next generation, actually.
No, that's fantastic. And talking about the diversity piece, which obviously you just mentioned, and the percentage of, you know, females in the industry as well. I mean, as a recruiter, kind of, you see that every day with the applications you get. But what do you think we can do to kind of encourage more people into the industry? Do you think that there's other tactics that could be used?
We've got to get them younger. So, you know, you go to school and little ones are watching Bob the Builder, playing with Barbies, and the stereotypes they're still being filled with don't include surveyor anywhere. So we need to engage with children, not just at secondary level. I mean, somebody needs to write a series of children's books, you know, Sally the Surveyor or something. And make it so that they think it's an option for them. So I think that's really, really important. We also need to keep focusing on it being cool. And surveying is really cool. So let's get the influencers and the vloggers and like you, Jess, get out there and making a noise. Which is why I say yes when people ask me to do these things, you know. I want them to see that, you know, some senior people in the industry do go in for all this, you know, sustainability and do think more modern than you might expect. Oh,
Yeah.
that makes me sound like I'm 100.
I completely get what you're saying though, because when I, you know, if we go back to sort of when I was at school, and like you said, even before secondary school, when you're really thinking about a career, I'd never heard of a surveyor. I don't think I'd even heard of it when I was at university. I think the only time I really heard about it was when I looked at going into recruitment, and I kind of got put on a property and surveying desk and I had to learn it all. And obviously since learning it, I love it now, and I think I wish I'd known about it probably when I was at school. So I definitely agree. So much more needs to be done, and I think probably also more needs to be done in bringing people in who maybe, you know, maybe have done another career or in another career at the moment but want to transition.
We've got specific routes within APC for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I do think that, and we've got a lot of, when I interview for APC, you know, 4 candidates in a day, you'll get maybe 3 of them will be in their 20s, you know, fairly soon out of uni, but there's a lot of mature candidates.
Definitely.
There's a lot of people who've been in say, a estate agency, or, you know, or maybe they come off the tools on the construction side, and they've just decided, you know what, I'm going to get qualified and become a surveyor. And that's always fantastic. I do FRIX assessing as well, and that's always really interesting to see, you know, most people wait far too long before they step up to FRIX. Especially women. But so I do think that there's a lot of potential there, and people need to realise that the profession is not one size fits all. It's very varied.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because I spoke to somebody at Sava before.
I know Sava well, yeah.
Yeah, and I know they're huge on that. Yeah, taking any background and putting you into surveying and getting you through the qualifications.
They've got a fantastic route, you know, that gets people in for the ASOC, which is the lowest level of membership, and takes them right through the process. So I think for ASOC, that's a really great route.
Yeah, definitely. I sometimes think that maybe perhaps in other areas of surveying, you know, looking beyond, that's obviously a lot based on residential surveying. So if we looked at even like building control, for example, I just think that perhaps, and obviously I'm not the one to do it, I'm not a surveyor, but I think that so much more could be done to bring people into sort of those sorts of professions as well.
Building, interesting that you mentioned building control, because that is probably the trickiest area of them all. And most building control officers are not actually chartered surveyors, and they really should be.
Yes.
Because they've got all of the skills that are necessary. But again, their bit of the public sector, you know, doesn't really encourage it. So I think there's a lot to be done there. But RICS are doing great guns on that. We've got quite a few distance learning courses that are about getting people, you know, in. And eventually, I think we will be providing from the ground up. At the minute, we're looking at, for example, providing courses that take people from ASOC to chartered member, where they haven't got a degree. So we'll provide the degree level of qualification and then support them with APC. That's brand new. We've run a couple of pilots, and it still needs to be refined, but we're getting there.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think, you know, even just looking at it from a recruitment perspective, that would be so helpful, because I think I mentioned building control because building control is one of the areas I recruit in, and it's just so candidate short, and a lot of the clients I work with say we want somebody chartered, whether that's Association of Building Engineers or RICS or CIOB, but it's just finding them people. It's tricky. I just think it's such a good industry, surveying as a whole, any discipline within surveying, I think is so interesting. And this is probably one of the reasons I really set this podcast up, is just because I want people to listen who are considering it or maybe haven't even heard of it. And there's just so many options, isn't there?
It's a massive profession, and there's something for everybody. And the RICS website is not the best. So I would say if anybody wants to find out stuff, Google it. and that'll probably point them quicker to the right bit of the RICS website. But yeah, there's huge opportunities, and we don't forget we've got 19 different pathways, and valuation is just one of them.
Yeah, there's so many routes, isn't there? It's literally, there's something for everybody, whether you want to be more site-based, whether you want to be office-based, whether you want to be dealing with people or not. There's just so many options. If you, this is a bit of a random question, really, but obviously you love valuation. If you could pick another area of surveying, one of those other pathways, what do you think it would have been?
Oh, that's a really good one. I think it would be property finance and investment in commercial, because I've mainly been a commercial valuer, and I do like a bit of discounted cash flow, and investment analysis and things like that, asset management. So yeah, I'd like to be a fund manager.
Brilliant.
Who wouldn't?
So still looking at the financial side of things then. I see that's...
Yeah, I like the numbers. What can I say?
Yeah. So other than, I guess in the future then, so we've looked at the obstacles which are potentially going to be in the way as we move forward. What do you think like the wider future looks like for it? I mean, I know we've talked about bringing people into the industry and things, but like beyond that, what do you think?
I think our future is global.
Yeah.
So the RICS is working hard on that, and it's patchy, and but we need to go global, because money is a global thing, particularly when you think about mortgage security. I mean, the global financial crisis was a result of American subprime residential lending, and yet it affected you and me, didn't it?
Yes.
So we can't avoid that. So I think there's increasing opportunities to work around the world, and at the moment that's mainly Middle East, but also Australia. Chartered Surveyor is one of the professions that gets the highest points in their famous point system. So if you want to emigrate to Australia, I think it's second best after nursing. So yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, and so yeah, I think the future holds global. The future holds digital.
Yeah,
the future is diverse and hopefully more green.
Yes.
So I do think all of those things are there for the taking, but we're still in its infancy, and that's actually quite exciting, because do you know what? You and I and all the people who listen to this, we can help to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of those points. I think even from an outsider's, so to speak, point of view, I think the future for it is exciting. It's just getting people into the industry, encouraging it, and getting people that want to make those changes.
But the industry is a big team, and I think that the property world includes everything from designing, planning, and building things, then managing, renting, valuing, asset managing, starting again with redevelopment. So that cycle includes all of our different pathways, and it doesn't just include the chart surveyors, the ASOCs and the FRICs. It's also going to include people like you who are supporting us by helping us to find the right candidates and promote the profession. And it includes everybody else engaged in corporate services and management and HR and training, and all of us together. You don't have to do it that way. You can be involved in other ways. It's a very, very broad church.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the things I noticed from speaking to surveyors is it is a team, and most people know other people, and you kind of, it's just a network, isn't it? And I think all it needs to do is just everyone needs to kind of work together.
They do.
Yeah, they definitely do. If you was to look at then these people coming into the industry, so graduates, for example, what would be the key bits of advice you'd give them, for their career and APC as well?
Okay, so I would say that get to grips with the milk round. So that's how the big companies recruit. I'm sure you're aware of that. And work out what employers want. And I would say to start with, don't be too fussy. So you might think, I want to work for CBRE. I want to be with the very best, or I want to be with Savills or any other big names. And then you don't get through their grad selection because they've got thousands, and they can afford to be very choosy. And then you think, well, that's it, I'm changing professions. That happens quite a lot, and actually they're missing opportunities in the public sector. There's the valuation office. I mean, they recruit 40 or 50 every year. All of the local authorities, housing associations, they all need surveyors. The NHS has surveyors. Then you've got the small practices. So don't underestimate the value of door knocking. Now, obviously not at the moment. It might be unsolicited emails at the moment, or LinkedIn messages. But back in the day, only a couple of years ago, a young surveyor that I know couldn't get a job on the Milk Round, started to get very down about it, really wanted to work for Colliers, but didn't get through the selection process, and literally just went knocking doors in London. And eventually she wore somebody down and they gave her a go.
Fantastic.
So, and that was not really where she wanted to be long term, but it was a good starting place.
Definitely.
And once you've got a job, it's a lot easier to move jobs. Well, you know that's your department.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's it, isn't it? Everyone has an ideal situation post qualification, post your degree, and like you said, it's so easy to kind of become deterred from that. But there is so many organisations, or like you said, with the NHS, etc., the public sector. There's so many opportunities. You've just got to get your foot in the door.
Absolutely. Do not underestimate the value of that foot.
Yeah.
And get a shoulder in as well.
Yeah, why not? Just push your way in, but you've got to do that.
Be cheeky, people can only say no. And so, it doesn't matter if they do. You just say, well, thank you so much for considering my request, and you move on. And who knows, in the future they might remember you.
Exactly. But I think that the key when you finish your degree is, like you said, get that foot and that shoulder in the door so that you can get started on your APC, so you can get that.
Do not delay. You don't have to sit it after 2 years. That's just the shortest time period. So I always say, get the clock ticking. Get enrolled. Get yourself a counsellor, and then don't worry about it until sort of the last year before you want to sit. So you can take up to 6 years. Just get started. Just get started.
If you were to give any advice, so one of the things that as a recruiter I hear a lot is people that are in roles, with a company, they're going through their APC, or at least they were partway through, or they were thinking about it, but they're not getting that support, and they're seeing it as really far away in the distance now. They don't know how they're going to get there. What advice would you give them?
Okay, I think sometimes you have to accept that you're not going to get what you need from your current employer, and you need to take control and change employer. So sometimes that's what it takes to become chartered. So discuss the competencies with your counsellor and your employer, and if they can't help you, then find someone who can. And change jobs. And that's very common. I would say most candidates I interview at final assessment have moved throughout their APC to gain the competencies that they need. I mean, obviously, you can drive it by asking them, I need experience in this area, please can I have some work in that area? And if they just can't do it, well then, go and talk to someone like you, Jess, and see what can be done. Yeah,
exactly. I think sometimes probably the worry when you kind of come into it, so you just finished your degree, you started with somebody, is just moving so early on in your career. You've got your foot in the door, and then you look to leave, and they're worried about how that'll look for them. But I think, like you said, it's just important, isn't it, to get going with that APC in any way.
Well, the younger people in the job market, so people sort of between 25 and 40, I think the average time they stay in a job is about 6 months, isn't it? It's not very long.
Yeah, it's not very long. I think it is probably about 6 months.
CVs are very varied. So this is what employers are used to. They don't think, this person's moving around, there's something wrong. It shows a dynamism. 6 months, if everything's 6 months, you might begin to wonder.
Yeah.
But, certainly a year or 2 years, and you don't have to do 26 years like I did. Those days are gone.
Yeah, I don't really see that anymore, but it's very commendable.
Yeah.
It's very commendable. And obviously, you joined a company, though, that you really enjoyed working for. So why not stay with them? If you're getting to achieve what you want to achieve, then
well, public sector, and I remember I had those 2 babies,
yes,
part-time, flexible working, home working,
exactly.
term time working. I mean, they were just brilliant. They facilitated my childbearing.
yeah, exactly. Yes, I think there's so many perks for being public sector or private sector. You can kind of weigh up to, and it's whatever fits best for you, isn't it, at the time?
And that grounding, that I got at the VO, it's made me so much more confident as a surveyor and as a teacher of surveyors. I know that I know these basics really, really well, and I have the confidence to say to other people, no, you're on the wrong lines there. And you don't realize, when I was at the VO, you think that all the slick valuers, in the big companies that are earning far more than us, and they're obviously a lot better. Well, now I've been in the private sector 7 years. They're not a lot better.
No, it's just about the individual, isn't it? I don't think it matters if you're public or private sector. There's so much to learn from both sides. Do you find when you are obviously supporting people within their APCs, do you find there's much of a divide between the number of people you've got coming through that are from the private sector and then the number from the public sector?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's counter-cyclical. So we tend to find that when the market's down and surveyors are being made redundant in the private sector, then there's more public sector people being assessed because they don't lose their jobs.
Yes.
And then when things are booming, people are leaving the public sector and joining the private sector, and so then there'll be more private sector. So it's quite interesting, really. And I think if you're worried about what the market might be doing going forward, then the public sector, particularly the VO, because they've actually got massive need for surveyors for the next reevaluation. It's a bit of a safe haven.
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of grads coming into it, it's just, honestly, everybody's different, aren't they? So one size doesn't fit all. So somebody might be really well suited for valuation office.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Others not so, but you just got to find where's going to get you through the APC, somewhere you're going to learn and just kind of take it from there. I think some people think too much about, we'll go to this huge company, like you mentioned CBRE, for example. So I really want to be there. I want to spend 10 years there, but it's just not how it works at the moment, is it? With so candidate short.
And it depends on people's skills as well, doesn't it? I mean, some people are well suited to the corporate environment, which is quite different than the public sector. And some people do really well with things like agency and, being market facing.
Yeah.
And there's none of that in the public sector. So it's really a question of deciding what suits your skills.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any advice you'd give for anybody who perhaps has sat their APC but not passed? And I
would say don't take it too personally. It's about your experience and how it matches the pathway guide. It's not about you as a person or you as a surveyor, because your employer might not be actually doing a lot in the areas that are required to be level 3.
Yeah.
So I would say read the report, but don't get bitter and defensive. Just start again. Go again. Around 30% of all candidates get referred. So there's a lot of people in the same boat. And I would say some of the best surveyors I know got it on their second attempt. Just go again and don't take it personally. But you get a lot of surveyors who did really well at school, did well at university, got a job on the ground, passed the driving test first time, and they've never ever failed anything. And they get to APC and it's devastating for them.
Yeah.
So and to be honest, if that's the first time you've been referred or failed, you're doing really well in life, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
But talk to your counsellor, make some changes, go again.
Yeah.
Try and stay positive.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? Because I obviously speak to surveyors that I speak to many surveyors that didn't pass first time and have passed, and then you also speak to people that really are disheartened because they have just not passed it, and they're kind of a bit lost, like they don't know what to do
But
from
they
there.
care, don't they? And that they care so much about it, which is a fantastic thing. But if you put yourself under a tremendous amount of pressure, it's actually a lot harder to think during the interview and to be engaging and to smile and to make strong eye contact and all the things that you need to do. So it's a conversation. And if you treat it like an exam, you won't pass, you'll get level 1, but you won't get to level 2 and 3. So you've really got to think about not answering questions like an exam, but responding to questions like a conversation. And you often get very clever, very well prepared candidates who just don't get that distinction. And that's why they're referred.
Yeah. So is that the main bit of advice you'd give somebody about sit their exam then?
Practice talking about it. Don't read and write. I mean, yes, you need to read it. So get my revision guide, read it.
Yeah.
But have mock interviews. Practice Q&A with your counsellor. Even just record yourself talking on your mobile phone or in a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how you articulate your experience.
Yes.
Are you a safe pair of hands?
That's really good advice. Yeah, thank you for that. Hopefully that will be valuable to anybody that's listening.
I hope so, because it's hard for people to believe when they've been referred, but honestly, that it makes a massive difference just to practice talking.
Yeah, you can know everything technically, but if you can't convey it and talk about it in the right way, then how's anyone else meant to know that you know it all? So I guess kind of to finish up then, is there anything exciting you've got going on? Is there anything that you'd particularly like to talk about or mention at this point?
Well, I've already mentioned my revision guides, which very proud of them. They're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
got lots of fab testimonials. And I'm involved in RICS training. So the APC prep days, which are relatively cheap, they're available on the RICS website, official RICS training. I deliver those with my friend Danny Menkoff, and we do mock interviews together. That's just started again for this session, so I'm excited about that. Got our first one on the 11th of February. I really enjoy those. And working with Lionheart is also fantastic. But I'm trying hard not to overload myself. So I'm trying, believe it or not, I'm trying to be part-time. It's really not working, but I'm trying.
I was going to say, you've got a lot going on for part-time.
I want to travel when the world comes back again. I might well be teaching people from another country. That's what I want to do.
Why not? Yeah, it's the kind of role really you can do from anywhere, couldn't you? So that's my thing. That's really exciting. So I will I'll kind of finish it up there, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, and I hope and I'm sure that people will take a lot of value from what you've said, and I know that if they reached out to you, you'd be happy to have a conversation with them, and if they go onto your website, which I'll obviously put in like the comments of this podcast, they can look at getting a copy of one of those brilliant books, especially
the contact form, they can use that to ask me questions,
perfect
as well. So
that's brilliant.
It comes straight to me.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you for listening, Jess. It's really lovely talking about my career, so thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you're very, very welcome.